So that means something's got to change. But people are also, to your point, driven by fear. Fear is a greater incentive than rewards.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to continue down this destructive path of paying more for less, then let's keep doing what we're doing. But if we want, better results for less, right? Let's make our money go further. Let's give you all these other things. Then that means we have to make a shift. We have to make a change in how we do things, right? So, but people are afraid of change. So change is the big obstacle to overcome. But the hard part is you got to, the first step to any of that is you got to get somebody who's willing to at least engage with you, listen to you. And I always tell people, rather than you talk, let them do the talking. Right? Find out from them. Ask them, okay, so what are you concerns? What are you really truly concerned about? What is it that you want?
Welcome back, everybody. We've got a special intro for you today since we are doing a shared episode. For those who don't know us, I'm James. This is my co-host, Mike. We are the Critical Compass podcast. Some of you may know us from there, and we also just recently produced a small documentary on the Alberta UCP AGM, which actually featured our guest, Nadine Wellwood, who joined us in that documentary. She is the author of Alberta Rising, A Principled Vision for a Sovereign and Free Nation, an excellent book, a clear and concise guide, essentially any thought or talking point you may need to know when it comes to Alberta independence from a principled level. This book is a great reference that way, and I would highly recommend it. Nadine, how about you give us a little bit of a welcome? Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Happy New Year to you guys.
Me too.
Yeah, so just for your audience who may not be so familiar with me, obviously the author of Alberta Rising. Thank you for that warm comment. I did not pay him, I swear to say that. And apparently it's light reading. He's already insulted me, so we're good to go.
Real quick read. Yeah, just breeze through it.
Well, most people have short attention spans, and who wants to be lectured to, right?
Yes,
so
right.
For me, I wrote the book to be very concise and more just to get people to think. I'm not here to give the answers, just want people to think critically about some of the problems and what they think some of the solutions might be. And I think the book really points out the ability of, there are other places around the world that are doing it better. So why aren't we doing at least, at a minimum, that? And just to before we get into too much of that, I've been around the block politically in the turmoil and the fray for about 8 years now. And I, prior to that, and still am a chartered investment manager. So lots of things economically we can bring up tonight. Mr. Carney and Miss Chrystia Freeland, who's now the economic advisor.
That's that Ukrainian chick, right?
Yeah, that Ukrainian chick, the Canadian MP that's over advising Ukraine on how to spend Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
So a little bit of background on me. Been working in finance for 20 plus years, chartered investment manager, been around politics now for about 8 years. And I owned an aerospace and defense company. So I've been an entrepreneur. Look, you need another drink. You're dropping stuff.
I know. Well, we were going to cut that part out, I'm sure. But now since you've addressed it, I have to find it and pick it up. Oh, I can't find it. Keep going.
The joys of editing. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
It's great to finally have you on. And like we mentioned before, we can unpack any of these things when it comes to the state of Canada. I'm sure as we, even talking about Carney, the conclusions out of this is Alberta's got to leave. I don't know, I cringe a little bit because Canada does not feel like it's doing well. And 2026 feels like it's going to be a very dynamic year geopolitically, and it's going to get a lot of people talking. And I think we're off to a interesting start already.
Nadine, what was your turn of phrase that you said before we hit recording what 2026 is going to be?
Well, I did a little video yesterday and I said 2026 is the year of shifts, SHIFTS. And I said, feel free to drop the F.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be bonkers. It sort of is bonkers already, it feels like, because so much is kind of coalescing all at once, and probably maybe the most consequential thing to start the year is that, we've gotten approval from Elections Alberta to start collecting signatures for the petition for the referendum. So what are you kind of feeling going into this week?
How about vote yes?
Mm.
That's a good
Start
start.
there, yeah.
Absolutely. It for me, and part of the reason for writing the book was is getting more people, all of Albertans, involved in the conversation. This is not a left, right. This is not a rural, urban. This is an Alberta decision, and this is what is right for Alberta. And so I didn't want people to kind of make a decision thinking that, well, this is about being conservative or NDP, or it really is a sound economic decision, a sound policy decision that everybody should take very seriously. But here's the reality: whether you want to stay in Canada and you just simply want a better deal, better terms, whether you want an independent Alberta, or the other third option, which I don't support, is the 51st state. But it doesn't matter which one of those three that you want, all of them hinge upon a yes on a referendum vote, because it's about leverage. Right now, Alberta is very easy to ignore because we have no political leverage to use, even to negotiate better terms. So even if Albertans are thinking, hey, I don't want to leave, but you know what? We have to negotiate a better agreement with Canada, then you have to vote yes for a referendum. And my book really was built around exactly that, designing and getting you to think about, what does better education look like? What does better healthcare look like? Do we truly need all the licensing and registration? Is the government the right size? Do you like paying taxes, or would you prefer to pay less taxes? So just all these sort of common sense ideas, and then giving people some food for thought as to, okay, well, if I was in control, because I do say in my book, I now turn the pen over to you, what would that look like? What are your ideas? What are the things that you would like to see implemented? And, from there, it opens the door to conversation. So now you've got something that you can talk about with friends and family. And hopefully it's a discussion, not a wrestling match, which I have seen that happen. And that's where, for me, Alberta independence is so critically important. I mean, I can talk about the economics all day long, but, for people who want a better future for their children, they want a brighter future for their family. You want better businesses, better service, better products, more innovation. It doesn't matter. Pick any subject. Alberta independence can be the path to that.
Yeah, and that's such an important point that you started with too, about how this is it shouldn't really be viewed as a left-right issue, because the fact is that even if you just want to talk about it from a point of view of, like, do you want your political opinion to count for something, regardless of where you happen to lie on a line, right? Because we already know from our last election that Alberta's opinion on anything doesn't really matter at a federal level. So yeah, if you want to have a stronger political voice at all, this is a good thing for you. But also, I mean, you're the financial expert amongst the three of us here. So, the thing that I always bring up to people is, like, what could you do with an extra, 15, 17, 20,000 bucks in your pocket every year? Like, what would you do with all that money that you think is being done? Like, are you happy to look at your paycheck and see 40% of it being pissed away somewhere that you can't, it's not accountable to you, to whatever your interests are? Like, don't you think you could make better use of that? And that's a pretty hard argument, even for a pretty hard leftist, to be like, oh no, I couldn't use any more money in my life,
Oh, yeah, of course not. Who needs more money? We have so
Yeah.
much of it. We have so much of it now, we're just giving it all away to Ukraine and,
Right.
other places around the world, because they need it more than we do. Yeah, what's interesting that you point that out, the Ukraine GDP is actually higher than Canada's.
Oh,
And yet
good.
we're the one giving billions of dollars to them. So, it's financial decisions like that I look at, and I shake my head and I go, we have to get away from this. We Canadians are being bled dry in taxation and regulation. So, Canada's problems largely are a lack of productivity, in my opinion. And that lack of productivity is boiled down to the fact that we have a very large government that is trying to control everything and that is over-regulating, and there is no innovation, there is no creativity. We have oil reserves, we have natural resources that we're not developing because of ideology, not because of skill or a lack of knowledge or even a lack of demand. All of these assets that Canada has, they're needed everywhere around the world, and we're choosing to leave them in the ground. And so if Albertans want a better future, there is one available to be had. We just have to be willing to vote yes on a referendum and then just hold firm to principles and negotiate better terms. And in my opinion, those terms are independence. It's not better terms with Canada. It is certainly Alberta wants to be an independent nation. Um, but yeah, what could you do with an extra $17,000 in your pocket? You know, that helps alleviate a lot of the affordability issues going on today. And that's just the beginning. It really is just the beginning. Because as we increase productivity and we increase the innovation and the creativity and we start developing the resources we have, you're going to have better paying jobs. Right? We're going to have more businesses. There'll be more opportunity for you to become your own business. All these things open up, which right now we don't have the opportunity or even the option to explore because the heavy hand of Canada.
Yeah, it seems like very much we're in a bloated state where it's hard to get anything done. That extra red tape just keeps on putting a barrier, even to get a business up and running. Like, well, what's this hurdle? What's that hurdle? And a lot of people will try to start their own business partially as a financial incentive to protect and grow their own wealth. And then you have to think about like, well, why do people need to find all these creative solutions to even protect their wealth from dissolving? And that circles back to the issue that we do not have sound money. We do not have an economy that rewards people for earning. Essentially, you are penalized in any kind of way, let it be capital gains, let it be working a little bit in overtime. The incentives are contrary to productivity. So if you punish productivity, like what would you expect over time? You'd expect pretty much all sectors to become less productive in that way. I can understand how people can get caught up in kind of the empathetic or like in their empathy, like it's misplaced. They always say like, well, I'm a good citizen and it's like, I don't mind if some of my taxes go to helping others in need. And they assume it's being spent responsibly. Maybe they don't look at the layers of bureaucracy, like where it gets wasted, how there's no mechanism to really reduce that bureaucracy. Essentially, when you get this public sector growing and growing and growing, you don't have the same mechanism to reduce a department that is no longer serving its purpose. You essentially have these departments fighting for their own survival. And once you establish it, you just have another layer of bureaucracy or another layer of the public sector, which is just another hurdle for getting things done. And it's a time and like money sink in the government. So if not for intervention, over time, you get this corrupt, bloated, like larger and larger public sector that essentially isn't doing the job it's meant to do. So you can still have that empathy and you can say like, yeah, we need to provide the services in some way. And maybe you have the argument, maybe you have the discussion about like what role of the government, like how much government should be involved in it. That's a slightly different discussion than where we're at right now of we're kind of stuck in this bloated state. So and then the question is, how do we get out of a bloated state? Like, can we do it within Canada? Is there any mechanism in Canada that would actually reduce the bloat?
Well, there is, but Canada doesn't have the political will to do it. And you're seeing that more and more. So you brought up a number of things there. One I'm going to address quickly is the empathy and the need for Canadians to be what I would call charitable. Well, if you have an extra $15,000 to $17,000 that the government says we're not going to take out of your pocket directly, well, you can choose to spend that however you wish. If you want to be charitable with your own money, then that's what the definition of charity actually is. But when the government takes your money by force, let's be honest, that's called theft. That's not charity. And then when the government makes the decisions as to who is going to receive that money, that's not you being charitable. Okay. So, I mean, for me, I would much rather see the individual keep everything that they make. Why? Because it does incentivize you to earn more. And I'll tell you this, it's kind of like, I had a conversation with a young man about capitalism and competition. And, it was on the grounds of teaching. And I had proposed that we do vouchers maybe for teachers. And he's like, well, everybody would want to come here then. I said, so what you're telling me is you're afraid to compete. Right? You don't want to have to compete with everybody else on an equal scale. And he says, well, no. But I said, no, hear me out here. So I said, here's what competition does, right? Competition creates better products. It creates better services. It creates higher paying jobs. It creates more opportunities. It creates better citizens. And what does better citizens do? Create better nations. So when you talk about the role of government, it is absolutely vital to understand what the role of government actually is. And in my opinion, the role of government right now is truly bloated. Not only in the federal side, but even provincially. I was so helpful when Danielle Smith got elected that we would see a smaller government with a smaller budget. She went the opposite direction. That is not conservative. Our public sector right now is way too large. It is consuming 50% of everything. So for every dollar that is being collected in taxes, our public sector, they seem to think that they're contributing to the productivity of the nation. Now, I want to make it very clear to anybody listening, I'm not talking about value that you bring. Doctors bring value. Teachers bring value. No one is disputing that. But when it comes to productivity, you are a liability, not somebody who is adding to the bottom line. Why? Because your positions are being paid with after-tax dollars. Now, people argue, they say, but I pay taxes too. But yes, you're paying your taxes with my taxes I've already paid. So there's nothing new being added to the bottom line here. We need small businesses. We need big businesses. We need less government because government is the drain on all of that. And right now, to your point, they are punishing those who are the most productive and those who contribute to the bottom line. So one out of every 4 worker right now is a direct government employee. Another 25%, so another 1 out of 4, work indirectly, funded by government, whether it's NGOs, teachers, doctors, other organizations. So you have 50% of society that basically is trying to fund the other 50%. That's not sustainable. It doesn't work. It punishes those who are adding to the bottom line, and that's what needs to adjust. Frederic Bastiat did an amazing book, if you're interested, called The Law. Another short one for you, James. Not very long, but is a little harder to read, I will say, but called The Law. And it talks about the proper role of government. In my opinion, the proper role of government, it serves 2 purposes. Establish the laws. They should be basic, easy to understand, straightforward. My freedom ends where yours begins. That's the law. Right? You can't harm me, I can't harm you. But we need someone to adjudicate that. So we need a role for the courts, right? Somebody who, when you and I have a disagreement, we don't have to break out the guns. We can go to an adjudicator, go to the courts, and have it settled in a reasonable fashion. The other one is to protect your and my civil liberties. That's really the function, the role of government. All these social programs, these can all be delivered and would be delivered, honestly, better by the private sector. Right? Keep the $15,000, $17,000. Now you direct where your money should go. Keep everything you earn. I don't believe that people should be paying income taxes, period.
Yeah.
Not a single income tax. You don't own me. The government does not own me. And by putting a tax on my labor, that's what you've basically said, is that I own you. I own it, and they believe that they own every dollar that you make. You're just really lucky you get to keep 50 cents of it.
Well, and it was a temporary tax to begin with. So
Always. What's that saying? There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program.
Yeah, the government never does anything on a temporary basis, which is why I always tell people the government is good at putting new programs into place. They're not so good at taking them away. So be very
Yeah.
careful what you wish for. I caution my mom and dad on this all the time. And they go, oh, the government should do something about that. And I'm like, Mom, Dad, if you want the government to do something about that, I got an idea. Here. Why don't you move back in with your parents? Let them make the decisions for you because what you've said is you're not capable of doing it for yourself. I
Yeah.
said, and leave me out of it because I want no part of it, right? I am willing to accept responsibility for the decisions that I make. And so, for people today, we have to be really careful about what we want the government and what we expect the government to do because it comes at a very, very high cost. The private sector can do things far more effectively, far cheaper, with a far better outcome for everybody than the government can.
Yeah. Oh, I mean that's sort of by definition too. I mean, like we're both, I don't know how deep James has gone into it, but like I'm a big fan of like Mises and Hayek, and like we're libertarian in our general philosophy. But yeah, there's I can't remember the book, but Hayek said it was the book that, or not Hayek, Mises said it in his collection of speeches he was giving in Argentina in the 50s, I think, about how there really aren't political parties anymore. There are just collections of special interest groups that are represented at a federal level, And so when you realize that, and then you look at how society used to be structured before politics became just collections of special interest groups pitted against other special interest groups, you realize, I think this was, I'm not a huge Ben Shapiro fan, but I think this was him who said that. Is a great quote. He said, like, you should be a communist in your own family, a liberal in your community, and a conservative towards the country. So like at each greater level, because as the provider of your family, obviously you have to be in charge of how the resources get distributed in your in your immediate community, your neighborhood, your community. You should be generous with your time and your effort to make sure your community is strong and thriving. And then as far as once you get as large as on a national level, you should just stay out of other people's finances. That's the best way to approach it, I think. So, when you look at how societies used to be structured, where churches took care of a lot of the charity. I know I don't know if the words are related, but it kind of sounds, saying them out loud, sort of sounds like they might be. You didn't rely on governments to dole out money to every interest that you may or may not have. Your community church took care of a lot. People took care of each other, and to your point, they didn't rely on. I feel like the way that our system is structured right now, this is not a knock on your parents, because it's my parents too. People just it capitalizes on people's most sort of like lazy or like not my responsibility sort of instincts, because the government, it's a problem, the government will take care of it. Then you can kind of, you've said your bit and you can take it off of your plate and leave it up to somebody else to do. But guess what? They ain't going to do it.
Well, 100 years ago, they didn't do it. So that's my thing. So, I always tell people you don't have to go back too far in history to see, where some major shifts happen. So here's that shift word again.
With the F.
Without the F. I'll give you the without the F version here right now. In 1966, the social insurance number was introduced. Prior to that, you weren't required to have a social insurance number to work. Why do you need one today? Why does anybody need a social insurance number to work?
To make sure you're taxed properly, I assume.
What happened before 1966?
They just relied on people's goodwill.
Well, what gave the government the right to tax you to begin with?
Yeah.
Right? At what point did you sign a contract or sign over your rights to your labor to the government so that they could tax you? So, these are all things that we need to start having the conversations and I know they're difficult to have, but that's the reality. So, we have a healthcare system right now where you have one choice. You go to the doctor, right? He's an MD. That word MD is patented. Nobody else can use that, right? You can't call yourself a doctor, right? If you're not an MD. Right. And so all of these things, so who gave somebody exclusive license to be able to tell, you and I, who we can see, who we can't see, who has got priority over our health, what options, because the government restricts options because, like you said, it's nothing but a group of special interests.
Mhm.
And whoever lobbies the government, the loudest and has the most money and offers the most, sweeteners to
Mhm.
those in power, those are the ones who are, benefiting from that. But that's not the average everyday person. I love this idea the NDP think that you can just tax the rich. Well, I'm going to tell you, you're never going to tax the ultra rich, which is how it's always sold. They don't pay their taxes in the same way that we do. They have
Yeah.
expensive lawyers and expensive accountants and offshore bank accounts. Sure, they may pay some taxes, but you're not going to catch them. And besides that fact, they'll leave.
Yeah.
Money is fluid and it is extremely flexible, and it just leaves. It leaves where it's not welcome. It leaves where it has to work. It must be a millennial. It doesn't like to work hard either. It likes easy
Yeah.
outcomes, right? And it likes to multiply as quickly as possible. It likes instant gratification. So when you think about things like this, it's not hard to start having the discussion about how we have to reverse things. But we have to be careful too, because Alberta, if we're going to leave, in my opinion, we have to leave all of that behind. We need
Mhm.
a blank sheet of paper and we need to rethink about what we want and how we want that to look. Do we want the same nasty fiat currency, financial structure that we have today, or do we want something different? Do we want sound, solid financial policy and sound money? Do we want a better healthcare system? And what would that look like? Does it mean better, more choices? You have people that are fighting to preserve a monopolistic healthcare system. That's what I look at. And I'm like, how about you keep your money? I'm happy to pay the insurance, but give me a choice. Allow me to go where I want, where I choose to get and receive help. I am not somebody who enjoys taking a Tylenol or an ibuprofen, let alone statins and all these other things that they're constantly pushing at the hospital, right? I try to maintain my health, right? I don't want to go to the doctor when I'm sick. I want the doctor to tell me how to stay healthy. So all of these things. So what is it that you want to see? What's important to you? Education, again, do you want just one source of education? Or do you want teachers to be able to freely be able to teach if your child is more geared towards music or more towards athletics or more toward arts or more towards STEM? Should they not be able to, fundamentally, they need to be able to speak the language, write the language, and do math. That's it. Beyond that, education was supposed to be about pulling out of the child their strengths, their natural abilities, and helping them develop those. And today, all we have is an instruction system and a daycare
Yeah.
system, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Right. And
Yeah.
that is what I'm trying to challenge people to think about is like, what is it that you truly want? Do you want engaged citizens who can critically think? The government does not. Right? But if you're brainwashed through the university system, you don't even know what's a boy or a girl anymore. It's going to be really difficult to have really challenging, critical conversations about the tough things when we can't agree on the simple biological things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a demoralization that's kind of inherent in that. Like people can't make sense of their reality, so they're more easily influenced by kind of a centralized authority at that point.
A confused brain,
Yeah.
right, is
Yeah.
easy to control.
Yeah, and so there's a couple points I wanted to unpack. One of them being you often have criticisms of capitalism that is not actually criticizing the free exchange of capital. It's criticizing these pseudo monopolies, these oligarchies, these like these cases where companies are woven into the public sector or into the government, that they have the sole contract for something and then there's no competition. So that's not a capitalistic
No.
system by any means. And you can still have welfare-based systems. You look at even like Sweden and Denmark they're actually not, they still have robust capitalistic systems, and they generate the wealth needed to actually pay for a welfare system. So I think it's for anybody having some of these conversations, because you'll have Norway and you'll have these kind of examples pop up, and it's worth actually kind of dissecting a few of those points, because people conflate a welfare-based system with a like heavy regulation, or they think of it as inherently a socialist system.
Well, it's really funny that you bring up Sweden, because I talked about Sweden in one of my podcasts, because a lot of people will bring up Sweden. They throw it in your face like, ha, gotcha. They're a socialist country. Sweden themselves will tell you they are not a socialist country. Go listen to their leaders speak. They will tell you straight, point blank, we are not a socialist country. They went down that path and they almost destroyed themselves in the process, to the point where they completely reformed everything. They reformed their entire government structure. They reformed their pension plans. They reformed all their social programs. And when people talk about their social welfare programs, you know who pays for them? The middle class. That's who pays for them. And they know it. And they're happy to pay for it, right? Because they can run their businesses in truly a capitalistic way. Canada does not have capitalism. We have fascism, is what we have. We have corporations that are in bed with the government. Brookfield, sorry, didn't mean to say that out loud, right? But they're in bed with the government. And like I said, it's lobby movements. I have always advocated that there should be no such thing as a lobbyist. Why? Because but here's the better thing. If the government didn't have the power to make the decision, well, you wouldn't have lobbyists, because there'd be no reason for them to exist.
Yeah.
Right? So again, going right back to the beginning of all of this is like, what is the proper role of government? And if government, people want government to do social programming, you have to stop and think about, why can't we, the private sector, do it first? Because they will most likely do it better, cheaper, with a better outcome, right? Before you ask the government to do something. And if you want to pay for it, it's okay. That's like, even in my book, I do propose, if people want to continue with healthcare, they want to continue with, then let's just look at different places around the world. Japan, from a healthcare perspective, does it for less money, but it too has a public healthcare system, but it's not monopolistic. You can walk into a doctor, you can walk into any specialist, you can get service immediately. You don't need to be referred. You know, wait times are not months or years, they are literally days. So how is it that they can do that, but we can't? So what are we missing?
Yeah. Well, and with Sweden too, I mean, that's Aaron Gunn did a really good documentary, maybe about a year or so now, maybe a little more, about some of Europe's healthcare systems. That was a real eye opener when you realize how much of the Nordic countries that leftists, liberals will point to as like, well, this is an example of socialized medicine, how it could be. Actually, they have very, very robust private systems, very strong private systems that lift a lot of burden out of the public system, and both function better. And kind of to your point, I mean, there's a very strong millennial aspect to this. You're right. Our generation, James and I are like smack dab in the middle of the millennial generation in our mid 30s now. It's weird to think of us being in our mid 30s and being millennials, because you just think of them as stupid kids, but we kind of still are stupid in general. But I was having a discussion with a colleague of mine about that I think kind of cuts to the point, like the really, really sharp end of the discussion here is when you're talking about capitalism and you're talking about the market doing things better than the government can, which is of course true. But what her argument was from a very, I mean, she's a self-described communist. She thinks she's a communist anyway. I was giving the example of how, like, nowadays, I mean, you look at the fruits of capitalism, where kind of a rising standard of living lifts all boats, and you look at how, like, homeless people nowadays have smartphones. Like, literally, homeless people on the streets have iPhones that they can, throw a few bucks at their phone plan every month or whatever. I mean, that's crazy to think about, right? Her argument was that, and so I was saying, like, basically, you got to look at what we're doing, even if there is income inequality, which of course there is. There's wealth inequality. There's, that's another, discussion. But you look at where the floor is, and with capitalism, the floor is so much higher than any other economic system that's ever been proposed or executed in human history. Her response was, which I think you might find interesting, I wonder what your response to this would be, was She said, well, it's not something to the effect of, it's not what you shouldn't look at what the situation is, but what you could have. Something to this extent. So she's using an example of, say, like an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos or somebody, and like, look at all the wealth that they have. Why shouldn't I have that sort of standard of living? You know, and it's a very like it's a thought process. And she said this unironically. Like, this is a very to me, it was a very like envy sort of based way of viewing the world. Not constructive to like actually having the discussion of why are people's lives better? How can they get even better than they are? But it's just purely looking at what the top 1% has. And it's not saying, how can I be like them? It's how can I take from them so that they don't have so much more than me?
Yeah. So it's
Curious
the
of your
debate
thoughts
around, the the opportunity versus outcome. Right. So it's do you want the opportunity to be able to compete equally, right? And on your own merits, you will determine your own value. Or you can take that approach and go, well, they have it, so I should have it. Right. And envy is a nasty, nasty emotion, because envy is very destructive. I don't even mind jealousy. Jealousy is, oh my gosh, that's a great hat. I got to get one of those.
You
Right.
can't have it.
I need one.
Mine.
I have to. Now here's the envy comes in. If I can't have it, well then you can't either. Take it off.
Exactly.
Right? And so therein lies the difference. Like, I want equality of opportunity. I'm willing to compete on my merits. This is where competition comes in. She's not willing to compete. She wants it all. She thinks she, is entitled to it because somebody else has it. Well, is she willing to sleep on the sofa in the office? Right? Because, Elon Musk often does that. Is she willing to risk everything she owns? Right? This is the whole thing about, even the government does this. They do this with small businesses all the time. Small business owners work and slave. They risk everything, more sleepless nights, more stress than you can possibly imagine. Not knowing whether they're going to put food on the table tomorrow, whether or not they're going to be able to pay the rent. And I know, because I'm an entrepreneur, depending upon the day, ask me. Right? Then the government will put some stupid regulation in place, which makes my life a living hell and an even greater nightmare than it already is, that affects my business but doesn't affect them. And everyone else is like, I don't know what the big deal is. And it's like, well, it is a big deal. Right? Because if I can't compete fairly with the skills, the knowledge, the expertise, and the tools I have at my resources, then I am now constantly having to readjust. That costs me time. It costs me capital. It costs me resources. That means I can't pay people as much. That means I can't, there's a whole bunch of things that people don't see. And so when you're a business owner, you assume all of that. It's very, very it is not for the meek, let me tell you, being a business owner. And these kids that think the way that she thinks, well, she doesn't see any of that. She's never lived through any of that. She doesn't experience any of that. She doesn't know any of that. She just thinks that he woke up one night and he was a billionaire?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
well, what about the mom and pop who, let's say, they slaved away and they put away $2 million? Now the government comes and says, well, hey, you made $2 million. We're going to take it all. Well, they don't get paid a pension along the way. They don't get health care benefits along the way. They were the ones who had to pay for their dental, their eye care. When the kids got sick, somebody had to stay home, all of these things. And they finally squirrel enough away to retire, maybe sell their business. And now that individual goes, well, the government should take half of that and give it to me.
Yeah.
Really? Well, I didn't take half of everything that you had as you went along the way, because you got to work only 9 to 5 in a nice cushy government job where you got all your benefits paid for and you never had to worry about, paying the mortgage or this is the problem I have with some of the unions today, right? They're making demand for more wages, but wages are not the problem. Affordability is the problem. And they, therefore, because affordability is a problem, they themselves are part of the problem, right? Because the productive part of society just cannot keep up with the demands of those people who, don't understand what the small business owner, the medium-sized business owner goes through. So, for me, when I look at individuals like that, is like, you want equality of opportunity. You do not want equality of outcome, Because if you want equality of outcome, you know what happens? The lowest common denominator. We'll all be on the street, living in all the same square little 300 square foot box that they're going to put you in. That's where equality of outcome gets you. And that's
Yeah.
been proven in history time and time and time again. Any and every time communism has been implemented in any country, that's exactly the outcome.
Oh, but it wasn't real communism, Nadine.
But of course, you can always do it differently, right? We're going to do it different this time.
I did want to say, for those who would want to be a billionaire, you can move to Zimbabwe and easily become a billionaire there. So
And you can
if
buy
it's
your
just
one
the
loaf of
number
bread
of
with your $1
zeros,
billion.
yeah, like you just want more zeros behind your dollar, then perfect. Or can you get more for each dollar that you spend? So there's a couple ideas, like, why are people penalized? If you work for 20 years and you work 80 hours a week, you're going to lose more of that than if you decide to work for 40 years, but only 40 hours, like half that amount of time. So there is essentially, it's like, if you're trying to work super hard to establish like a good plan for retirement, essentially you're in a higher tax bracket, you are penalized. It's harder to save that money, and you've got to you essentially got to gamble and invest it in ways to keep it going, which that's your whole field. I don't know if gambling is the right way to describe that. There are safer ways to gamble and there's less safer ways to gamble, but it feels like right now there's nothing sound that actually saves our dollar, and it's penalized from the government in multiple ways, but it's also, you've got this soft, like, it's eroding through just the expansion of the money supply as well. So like, there's no way for people just to store the value of their labor. And I think that's the first problem, because we've kind of talked about this before. It shifts people's time preference. So if you wonder why people are so stressed and they can only think in the next 6 months or year, partially it's because the language that we communicate over decades is now being eroded. You cannot plan for the future if your money is worth 90% of what it's actually worth that far into the future. It's hard to make those long-term decisions. So it shifts the population to a short time preference. And essentially, these things make it easier for people to be controlled by the next buzz policy or instant little Band-Aid solution. So it's hard to go down to the base layer of it all. And I think that's maybe a difficult conversation for a lot of people, especially the more collectivist-based ones that are stuck in this pseudo-empathetic kind of state.
It's kind of like the climate change conversation, though. I've had this conversation with many people, and I always ask them, so what are you doing about it? And then you get this blank look. Oh, my Lord, what do you mean? You're asking me what I'm doing about it? Well, I'm not doing anything about it. Right? That's usually the result. So if you want to be a billionaire, you can be a billionaire. But are you willing to do what it takes to be a billionaire? Like, I can tell you right now, I'm not willing to do what it takes to be a billionaire. I know some of them. I do. I've met them. I've heard their stories. Man, it's hell. And it does take a lot of luck. You know, some of them just get lucky and at the right time, right place, right? And sometimes it's who you know, not necessarily what you know. But it doesn't matter along the way. It doesn't matter which of those courses, if you just kind of lucked into it or whether you had to work for it. There's a price to be paid to have that kind of money. Right. And some of them are very lonely along the way. They lose relationships, not only, friends and family, but they lose wives and sons and daughters. You have to miss out on a lot. So for me, I want to be wealthy enough to afford the things I want to do. Take, the regular vacation, put my kids through school, have enough to get through retirement. But that takes some effort. Right? And a lot of people today are not even willing to say, well, I'm willing to put the effort in to do that. Right? You can't sit at home and play lotto and expect to get wealthy. It doesn't work that way. right? It's like saying, well, and we're seeing this with bodies, and weight. Everybody wants to take the pill. Ozempic. I need Ozempic. I got to lose 20 pounds. Nobody wants to go to the gym and put the discipline in that's required to lose the 20 pounds. So making money is the same way. It requires discipline. And you have to ask yourself, how much is enough? What is it? And I always tell people, it's not about money. It's about what it is that you want to do in life. Are you investing in yourself? The best investment any person can make is in yourself. My dad taught me that a long time ago, and that is consistent with every wealthy individual I've ever spoken with. They're like, Nadine, the best investment you are going to make is in you. Your education, nobody can ever take it away from you. The skills that you acquire. It's because why? Because if you make yourself valuable to somebody else, then you add value. It's when you sit at home and you do nothing but whine and complain. Nobody wants to listen to a whiner and a complainer, right? They want people who are going to get out and do stuff. One time I was at an event. This was many, many years ago. And I had this little cowboy. He was an older gentleman. Cowboy come up to me. He was much shorter than me. And then he's wearing a cowboy hat. His hat was much nicer than yours, by the way.
Should have taken it from him then.
There you go. And he would have given it to me. He was a gentleman. But he said to me, he says, do you know Beth? And I went, Beth? And then it dawned on me, he's thinking Yellowstone Beth. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. It's like, yes, I know Beth. And he says to me, he says, you remind me of Beth. And I had to take a moment and I said, please tell me it's not the batshit crazy part. And he says, no, it's the get shit done part. Right?
That's nice. That's good.
People of value get things done. Right? We don't sit and complain about it. Now I do my fair share of complaining about government. Government is the hardest thing to work around because you have no control, right? They implement a regulation or a policy. You're just subjected to it, whether it works for you or it doesn't. So, this is why I always tell people, please, if you want the government to do something, it's like, don't ask, on behalf of everybody, because I really would rather the government do less, just get out of my way. And I think that's how most conservatives are. Just get out of our way, leave us alone. We can take care of it. We'll get her done. That's the Albertan way. We'll just get her done. Yeah. And that's what we have to get back to a little bit more, is realizing, and I think a lot of that boils down to self-worth. People need to understand that you do have value, you do add value. But you know what? Nobody adds value to anybody sitting at home playing video games. You got to get off the sofa. You got to get out there. You have to put yourself out there. How many people are willing to share their ideas and to have somebody tell them that they were wrong publicly on a Facebook or a YouTube channel, right? That's a risk. Are you willing to take the risk in order to get the reward?
Yeah, that's a really good kind of the theme that I'm getting, and we've sort of talked about this on the show before, and it's kind of a matter of like when you're talking about performative behavior versus actual, like you say, like getting shit done. That's perfectly encapsulated when you mentioned the climate change discussion, because you got guys driving Teslas, like thinking that they're changing the planet as they're plugging into a charger where the energy from that charger is coming from a coal plant. So like there's no, they don't take it to the logical, to the logical ends of what they're actually doing. They just know this is the final product. I get to drive around in an electric car and I get to feel like I'm having an impact. So I guess, another one of the things we say all the time here, and it's probably getting boring for the, subscriber number 20 that we had that watches all our videos, but,
it'll be subscriber. You'll have 100 by the end of tonight.
Well, that guy that's been watching us for a year and a half, who hears me say this every other episode, but like a lot of the political discussion now is so, cartoonish in its depictions of, you've got, the far left and the far right. I talk about horseshoe theory all the time, where you think of, rather than thinking of politics on a line of the left and the right, you think of it as a horseshoe, where the furthest left and the furthest right actually tend to resemble each other more than the vast bulk of, the majority of people in the country who are generally pretty reasonable people. They all want the same things. So in your opinion, when we're having these discussions in the coming weeks and months, leading up to this referendum, what we've been asking all our guests this, what's your pitch to a leftist who views, and I'm using leftist a little bit derogatorily, but a more liberal minded person who sees the idea of independence as a starkly right-wing idea. We want to break up the country. We're selfish people. We're not actually interested in, we just want disunity. We want to be subject to Trump and a 51st state, whatever. Like, it's all these sort of cartoonish images of what being an independence advocate means. What's kind of your pitch to that person to at least get them to have a second thought about beyond the money, beyond any of the real practical things? Do you sort of have an emotional plea? Because a lot of leftist politics is based purely on gut emotion and instinct that may not be reasoned out yet. So do you have something that you've thought of or that's worked for you in your discussions?
I got so tired of talking, I wrote a book.
Yeah, right.
So same pitch I gave to you guys. Read this.
Yeah.
When you're done with it, give it to a friend, right? And then give them a deadline, because nobody does anything without deadlines. So give them a deadline. Say, I'm coming over in a week for a coffee. Tell me what you disagree with. So really, it's just about opening the dialogue, right? So when you tell a leftist person, you give them a book and you say, tell me what to disagree with. And this is a book that they think, because this is not a book necessarily about Alberta independence. It's about sovereignty. It's about freedom. Right? And they could apply to anybody. And so, but they're going to scour through this. I promise you, they will be like, I will find lots in here to disagree with. But you guys have read it. Is there really a lot to disagree with? Why? Because it talks about better education, better healthcare, lower taxes. It talks about, more choice, more opportunity, more freedom. Right? So I don't know too many people who are opposed to those things. And if you are, well, then there are other countries around the world that would be happy to accommodate you. Feel free to move.
Yeah, interesting how they just never seem to make the trip to North Korea, hey?
No.
It just never seems to come up.
It just, I don't know why. It's such a great place to live. When you look at it on a map at night, it's black. Meanwhile, South Korea is all lit up. Imagine that prosperity. So for me, my pitch is really transitioned into that. And I give my book to lots of people. I do. And I say, read it, tell me what you disagree with. And I've had a lot of people. I started this with even my first cousin. And she said to me, Nadine, I'm going to be honest. She said, I took another book with me because I didn't think I'd get through it because she knows my political views. She's a little left of center and from Newfoundland. And God love her. She wrote me. No, it's okay. It's okay. She wrote me back literally after after she read it. She got to the place. She says, "I was sad to see it end." She's like, "I couldn't believe it." Because if you can at least convince somebody to look, just take a listen, take a read. That's the hard part with the left is the conservatives always come at them. We always want to preach, attack. And it's like, just stop for a moment. Listen. What's important to you? Do you want more money in your pocket? Do you want better healthcare? Do you want more opportunities, right? For you, for your children, your grandchildren, whomever it may be. And then they're going to go, well, of course. Well, here, read this. And then tell me what you disagree with. Right? Because as a finance person, I'm always looking at patterns. I'm always looking at trends. I'm looking at trajectory. Which direction are we going? Is Canada improving or are we, disintegrating? Which direction on that scale is it going? Are we getting better or are we getting worse? We're spending more money for worse results. So money's not the problem, right? So that means something's got to change. But people are also, to your point, driven by fear. Fear is a greater incentive than rewards. So if you want to continue down this destructive path of paying more for less, then let's keep doing what we're doing. But if we want, better results for less, right? Let's make our money go further. Let's give you all these other things. Then that means we have to make a shift. We have to make a change in how we do things, right? So, but people are afraid of change. So change is the big obstacle to overcome. But the hard part is you got it. The first step to any of that is you got to get somebody who's willing to at least engage with you, listen to you. And I always tell people, rather than you talk, let them do the talking.
Mhm.
Right? Find out from them. Ask them, okay, so what are you concerns? What are you really truly concerned about? What is it that you want? This is another problem. Most people don't know what they want. If I
Mhm.
gave you a blank sheet of paper tomorrow and said, what do you want? You wouldn't know where to start, which is why, again, I wrote a book because most people don't know where to start. They don't even know where to look. So give them a starting point and then say, now, how would you make this better? How could you make this better? And the history tells us that the government doesn't make things better. The government only makes things worse.
Mm.
So we have to start getting people to start thinking enough, open enough to basically expose them to reality, and that's, in my opinion, that comes through history. And we don't teach history anymore,
Mhm.
right? We're rewriting history. We're erasing history. But it's all right
James, I know.
there for us to just take the time to do it.
Yeah. And James, I know you wanted to come in with a point, but I just a quick comment on what you said there. That's a really powerful psychological tool that you are using. I don't know if you know that you're using it when you give people your book and you say, "Tell me what you disagree with," because you're beginning with the negative. Like it's much easier for people to, like they say when you're a salesman calling somebody. It's rather than saying like, "Do you have a few minutes to chat?" The best actually question is, "Did I catch you at a bad time?" Because it's much easier. You give people permission to say, yes, you did catch me at a bad time, but let's chat when, at this time. If you're coming at it with, what do you disagree with? Well, that gives them permission to be like, oh, I disagree with, and then they may not find anything to, rather than you saying, here is a belief that you should have. And then they can react with no. They can just say no. And that allows them,
So
it puts them in the driver's seat.
in
Smart.
I told you I owned a defense company. My aerospace and defense company was modeling and simulation and human factors engineering. So psychology is
Yeah.
something that has been used on people for a very long time, and I don't use it from a manipulative perspective. But the reality is Edward Bernays is the master of spin. I don't know if you
Mhm.
guys know who that is, but he
No.
was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. So Sigmund Freud learned about the subconscious and wanted to implement that from a good perspective. Well, Edward Bernays realized that, yeah, you can manipulate people subconsciously, and he is the father of spin. And
Mhm.
so all the marketing stuff that you see that you feel you have to have something now, it's not a
Like my
want
hat.
anymore, it's a need. All of these things, you can thank Edward Bernays for that. And these are the things that are being used. Mass psychosis. You saw this with COVID, right?
Mm.
Everybody's saying the same thing. If you say something enough times, all of a sudden it becomes truth because it was said by authority enough times, so people believe it to be true. Nobody takes the time anymore. And part of that is by design as well. They keep people so busy, so distracted, so occupied, and so stressed,
Mm.
trying to put food on the table. Some people are working 2, 3 jobs to do that. You come home, you're exhausted, you just want to escape the world, really.
Mm.
That's not living, that's existing, right? And so for me, my hope is that I want people to want to live life, enjoy it to the fullest. I want people to love what they do and not do what they have to because they have to put food on the table. But that means we have to revamp some of the systems that we have. And in order to do that, that means you have to be willing enough, open enough to explore other options. Doesn't mean we have to do all of them, but you at least have to be willing to have the conversation. And what are they trying to do right now? They're trying to shut all the conversation down around all and any narrative that does not conform with the government's official narrative. That's very dangerous. That is probably the most dangerous thing I have seen in my 53 years on this planet, right? Now, thoughts are dangerous, ideas are dangerous, and you're not allowed to discuss them openly. This is communism, right? When you
Not
can't
very liberal,
express
is it?
yourself. Yeah, you don't have to hypothetically, theorize about it anymore. We're living it,
Mm.
right? And everything is always done under the guise of it is for your safety.
Mm.
Well, I don't want safety. What I want is freedom.
Mm.
I want to be
Well,
free to take calculated risks, right? That I know and understand and am willing to accept the consequences for a better tomorrow, right? And the government is saying, well, no, you're not allowed to take that risk. And that's
Yeah.
the problem. Government is force, right? You and I can have that conversation. Nadine, you want to jump off the cliff? Hey, go ahead. I'm not following you. You go jump, and I will watch you from up here. But when the government says everybody's going to jump off the cliff, you don't get a choice, right? And so therein lies the problem. Government is force. It's the gun to your head that says you will do this that I object to.
Exactly. The not having a choice is the big thing, but I think people get around that by sometimes they'll feel like, well, this current government, well, they've got my best interests in hearts. Maybe they agree with the Liberals because they're wearing the same colored T-shirt as them in this moment. And these same people are so quick to point out other people in the government that they hate, that are corrupt, and are doing bad things, and they've wasted money, and they've done this and that. And what I ask them is, if our system allows those people wearing that different colored shirt to become that corrupt, and if it allows that corruption to mess with our country or mess with your life, that is too much power. Then what would a system look like that prevents anybody from wielding that power, from becoming corrupt and with messing with your life? So if they wouldn't trust this power with somebody that hates them, then why have we given so much power away? As a
So
simple
ask
question.
yourself, would you trust yourself with that kind of unlimited power? You know, most people know themselves well enough to know that, yeah, no, I need some checks and balances in my life too, right? Discipline is hard. And so, and the other thing is if the one side's doing it, the other side's doing it. Because if the system allows it, then the system allows it. It doesn't matter who the player is. The game says that's part of the rules. So everybody plays to the rules, right? So, for me, we used to be naturally suspicious of the government. I'm not sure what happened to change there, but the government, it was at Ronald Reagan, right? 9 most dangerous words you could ever hear in the world today was what he said. And he says, I'm here from the government, or I'm the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah.
He wasn't lying, right? If you look at, does the government make things better or worse, right? Does the money get to where it's supposed to go? Typically not. And I'll talk about a hot subject here right now in Alberta, the Indigenous people, right? All the billions upon billions of dollars that are spent. Where's the money get to? Doesn't get down to the people living on the reserves. They're still living without potable water, for heaven's sakes. It's going to some chiefs and some hereditary. It's going to accountants. It's going to lawyers. It's going to bureaucracy. That's where it's going, right? It's not flowing down. Poverty we declared a war on poverty. Have we successfully defeated poverty? No. We declared a war on cancer. Has cancer gotten better or worse? So it seems like every time the government declares a war on something, the outcome gets worse, not better.
You've
it doesn't matter.
created an industry at that point.
Right. Yeah. Right? Pick a subject, any subject, education, healthcare,
homelessness.
Doesn't matter how benign, pick a subject. If the government gets involved, the outcome is worse, not better.
Yeah. Really great book on this. I don't know if you've read San Francisco by Michael Schellenberger.
I've heard of it, but I have not read it.
Great book. Yeah, really, really good read. Michael Schellenberger, for anyone not familiar, is a California-based writer. His book before then, it was called Apocalypse Never. It was about climate. He started off as essentially as like a California liberal that just like educated his way into being a California like libertarian because he saw how corrupt everything was, and he approached the so San Francisco is about like obviously all the homelessness. I think the subtitle is like how progressives ruin cities or something like that. And it just explores like San Francisco, Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, all these cities that have seen huge rises in drug crimes and or drug problems, homelessness, crime, and why the progressive establishment surrounding that is actually, it's perversely incentivized you know, they use precisely the opposite tools that you would want to use to actually solve the problem in order to perpetuate an industry that allows them to keep pretending that they're always just around the corner from being able to solve the problem, and that's why we
Never
see
let a
things in
good crisis go to waste, right?
100%. Yeah,
So
yeah,
best way to make sure you have a crisis is to be the one who creates it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like any like normal person prior to like 30 seconds ago would say that, what's the worst thing that you could possibly do to a drug addict? And of course, that's to give them free drugs, right? But somehow, we've been conned into thinking that this is a empathetic, compassionate government program that's, saving lives. And it's like it's exactly 180 degrees opposite bizarro world. And I mean, I don't know.
Mike, did I tell you my idea on safe consumption sites for people with peanut allergies? Like we can just set up a government supervised sites. We hand out the peanuts. We have EpiPens, medically trained professionals with EpiPens standing by, and that's harm reduction. So
James, that's genius. That's really good. I'm stealing that, by the way.
You're welcome to use it.
I'm writing it down right now. Peanut safe.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, it's like, and so I'm just tired of like, I think we're all in the same boat at this point. Like, I'm just kind of sick of living in this. I don't want to be told up is down anymore. And yeah, so this is a crazy. I'm gonna just tie her right back in here because we've been going for over an hour. Alberta needs to separate because of X, Y, and Z, and I think we've gone through the X, Y, and Z, but I think probably the most pressing issue for people involved in this movement, and you can tell me if you agree with this. Right now, people like us who are involved in this movement, the most pressing thing is, I think it's two sides of the same coin. No more infighting. We cannot be like arguing with each other publicly on Twitter like some of us are doing. People already in this movement, nitpicking over the exact right wording or the exact right policy for things that haven't happened yet in a country that doesn't exist yet. That's really disheartening to see, and we need to be very unified because if the left is anything, it's unified. And the other side of that same coin, I think, is, James has particularly been concerned about this with a couple videos that he recorded on the channel leading up to Christmas. How to talk to your family, how to talk to your leftist, your liberal family members, your friends about this in a way that doesn't start arguments, because we cannot be turning people off at the idea, and we need to be a positive, like, we're fun, positive people. We're likable, goddammit. We have friends. And people need to see us as this.
Choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like people need to see this side of it and not just think of it as like the most cartoonish caricature of a rural Alberta farmer that, you might think is the only guy in favor of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing for me is ask questions. Ask the questions. What is your hang up? Like, what is it that you're really concerned about with Alberta independence? Like, oh, well, I love these people. Danielle Smith is going to take away my pensions. Danielle Smith is going to take away this. And well, I'm glad you think that she has that kind of power. She doesn't. But, and people, what was really funny for me, when I did the Alberta pension plan presentations, I had people go, Nadine, by the end of my presentation, they were coming up to me, and these were people who, trust me, I knew were on the left. And they would come up and they go, okay, so I agree with you. The best thing we could do is get an Alberta pension plan. Let's get out from under the Canada pension plan. But I don't trust Danielle Smith. You know what my response to them was? I don't trust her either.
Yeah, right.
Right? It's like, let's find some common ground. Let's find some commonality, right? Yeah. It's like, I agree with you. I don't trust Danielle Smith. I don't trust anybody in the government.
Yeah.
Nor should any of you. Right?
Yeah, and that's a generally rule of thumb, yeah.
Talk doesn't match up with the outcome. Right? Because I hear a lot of talk and it sounds really great and a lot of promises, but they don't get kept. And then I don't see the results. Right? So I call that out. And I call it out on either side. I don't care which side of the fence you're on, left, right, center, it doesn't matter to me. I'm in this because I want a principled approach. Here's my principles. Here's the outcome I'm looking for. And if you promise me that outcome, I'm going to hold you to that outcome. And if you don't deliver, I'm going to call you out for it. So that's what we have to get back to. And on this side, you pot a good thing there, because we do have a lot of people that are fighting. People that say like, "Oh, no credible separatist agrees with this," and it's like, wait a minute, I'm the one who said that, and I think I'm a very credible separatist. I don't. We don't all have to agree on everything. This is
Yeah.
the thing, right? The whole point is to have the conversation, to have the debate, so we can get to the truth,
Mm.
right? To get to the best result. And if we're going to attack each other though and make statements like that, then no, we can't even get there. So,
Mhm.
but the other thing too is focus on the next task at hand. The next task is to get to yes on a referendum, right? Well,
Mm.
we got the petition, but the point is to get to yes on a referendum. There's talks about Indigenous and how we're going to deal with treaties. There's talks about, how we're going to deal with this or how we're going to deal with that. Well, one step at a time. Like, let's not put
Mhm.
the, the
Mhm.
the cart before the horse. Let's focus on the task at hand. And right now, that is, let's get to yes on a referendum. There are people out there who are saying a whole bunch of things that I completely disagree with. But you know what? We all agree that we need to get to yes on a referendum. So am I helping them? Heck yes.
Mhm.
How do I get those signatures on that piece of paper, and how do I help? Right?
Mm.
And it, like, again, it doesn't matter. If you are Albertan and you want the best possible future for not only you, but your children and your grandchildren, you have to take this seriously, because you are not the trajectory. Again, finance, everything is patterns, cycles. Everything runs cycles. Things getting better? Are we getting worse? Right? Shifts have to happen. So let's create the positive shift that is in our favor, that puts us back in the driver's seat, us in control of our destiny, our futures, not in the hands of Ottawa.
So yeah, I think it's a balance when it comes to having these kind of conversations, because we can't be stuck in minutia. We can't figure every single thing out. The ultimate goal is a yes vote on the referendum. But if we have zero conversations, then anybody wondering, they'll claim that we haven't thought things through enough, and there would be too much uncertainty for them to even want to support a referendum. So there is a careful balance in the middle where we're having respectful conversations, respectful brainstorming, without kind of this infighting that's demonizing each other in the process. If we demonize each other, then who's going to join a movement that feels negative and toxic? We need to be presenting a positive vision for the future that's welcome enough for people that are on the fence, that they would want to actually join. So,
Plug that book. Plug that book.
A positive vision, be a part of the conversation, be a part of the solution, not just talk about the problems,
yeah,
Yep.
it's,
Yep.
right?
it's a good read.
Conservatives can
And
be like that, right? We've talked about that before too, where it's like conservatives tend to be like, I like to think of it like a relationship. As a man, sometimes I'm kind of stupid when it comes to things with my wife. Sometimes she doesn't want me to inundate her with solutions to her problems. Sometimes she just, like you said, Nadine, just wants somebody to listen, ask questions, see how you're feeling about something. So it doesn't always have to be, I'm not, getting my toolbox out and solving every problem in Alberta. We're just talking about like, here's some positive visions that we have for what our future can be. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to bring Sweden back up is a perfect example. Are we willing to make the changes that Sweden made in order to have what they have today? Because I'll tell you, we're on the wrong track, right?
Mm.
We're on the Venezuela track that they now have to fix. Sweden was on that track and they had to fix it. And, it was really interesting when the government came to fix it, all levels of government. It was a completely nonpartisan decision, and they reformed everything. And
Mm.
I mean everything. Like, it's a really interesting case study, and it's one that people should take the time to at least investigate, even just slightly, because they risked, well, actually, they didn't have anything to risk. They had nothing left to lose. And
Mm.
that's the path Canada's on right now. Canada's on the, we're on the, we got nothing left to lose path, right? Except, well, I mean, we do have a little bit more we can lose. Carney talks about foreign investment. We're giving away our natural resources. for a
Yeah.
pittance? Why aren't we developing things at home? Why aren't we processing things at home? We need to become producers, manufacturers, not just seller of, raw materials, right? That's not investment.
Mhm.
That's a one-time sale and gone, right? We have to start thinking bigger and better. And there's many examples around the world, Sweden just being one, Japan's another. So, you can have social welfare programs if that's what you truly want. I don't particularly believe that's the right role for government. But if you want them, you can have them. But that means you have to be willing to pay for them. That means they also have to be structured in a way that they're sustainable. Right. And we can have those conversations. People go, oh my God, it's too much to take on. It's like, seriously, I had people tell me that a pension plan was too complex for people to start in Alberta. There are pension plans all over the world. There are people like me and many, many others who are very well qualified to run them. It's not hard, right? It's
Yeah.
not hard. It's
It's
just
an
new.
investment fund.
Well, it's new to you, but it's
Yeah.
not new to the people who do it every day.
Yeah.
Right? Healthcare is not new to the people who do it every day, right? So, these solutions that I proposed in my book, for example, they're solutions that we could implement easily enough tomorrow,
Yeah. Well, I ask
right?
people
So,
that too about like the pension plan bit is easy. I mean, oh, we can't have a provincial pension plan? How has Quebec done it for the last 60 years? And they get relatively similar up years, some down years, but relatively in line with the Canadian pension plan. It's
Yeah,
plus or
but
minus
Quebec has
2 to 3
special
points a year.
rules.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
We're allowed to demonize Alberta, and then when it's Quebec, they're like, well,
it's
it's
different.
Quebec. They get to do what they want. So
Yeah.
well, the Alberta pension plan is a whole conversation in and of itself, but people have to understand what things are, but they also need to understand what they're not. And your Canada pension plan is not a pension, it's a tax. It's a
Yeah.
payroll tax. And, we can do it so much better. Why is it that, if you have a spouse that dies, that you were relying on that pension, why is it that that pension then goes back to the government?
Mhm.
Why is it that you don't get to keep it? Right? Like if you just
Ooh.
look at just a pure numbers perspective, if you had invested the same amount of money that you gave the government and your company matched, right? Just the exact same program, dollar for dollar, you would have, $1.3 million in your bank account, right? At a 5%, so just a modest percent interest that you would have been earning if you'd invested it. And that money is yours. You can spend it if you got sick. You can give it to your kids if you happen to outlive it. And that's a 6 to 8,000 a year or a month, 6 to 8,000 a month pension that you get to live on. The maximum that you can get is $1,374,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
people
it
knew it was
has
such a racket.
redistribution.
$1,474 and $8,000 a month. Like one you can live on, the other one is like, okay, the cat food is on sale this week.
Yeah. Yeah, if people truly knew how little you actually get from your pension versus what you've put into it over your lifetime, it's just purely ignorance. And to what you said, I mean, my father passed away a few years ago, and my mom had to deal like, if you
Yeah.
want to look at it, there's a few events that like, what radicalized you, Mike? Well, COVID one, and then also my mother having to fight with the government to get survivor benefits from my dad's pension that he paid into for 60 years, like. It's a complete joke. It's an absolute joke, and it's criminal. I mean, if people understood, I don't know, people have called it, maybe you disagree because you know more about this, but people have called it, it's essentially gone from being a pension plan to being actually more of a Ponzi scheme because the funds just truly aren't there. And that's why they have to keep pumping people into the country. And it's a system that can't survive on its own. And that's partially why, there is so much opposition from the Laurentians to Alberta separation, because they know that if we took out what is ours of the pension, the system would collapse.
Oh, it's already collapsed. It's just, this whole idea that it has 75 years of sustainability, all that's based around immigration and people continually paying into it. But the reality is it's not a pension. And people even say, well, it's an annuity. No, it's not an annuity. Right. And we can do so much better. We could have set this up as individualized pensions. We could set this up where there's a larger lump sum that's made up front and then never paid into again. And then it just continues so that you're not the one that has to do it. There's so many amazing opportunities that exist around the Alberta pension plan that, and that seems to be a big hang up for a lot of people on the independence conversation,
Mhm.
which is why,
Mhm.
I think it's important to bring it up. And I did a full, presentation. It would be an hour-long presentation, and all the data, all the facts, all the information are there. Alberta is so much better off. So much better off, because right now what we do have is a Ponzi scheme. It's a pay as you
Mm.
go. Yes, there is a little small bit, that the CPPIB, which is now CPP, Canada Pension Board, manages. But, even that amount is, people were shocked this year to see, oh my gosh, pensions are down as a government asset. It is a government asset. You don't own it. You don't
Mhm.
control it. You don't make the rules. They can change the rules anytime they want. It is not your money. It is the government's money. You talk about, survivors. If you're 55 years old, you've paid into this thing your whole life, you die tomorrow, you have no kids, no wife, guess what? Who keeps it? The government, every penny of it. So
Yeah.
what is it? It's a tax. And then
Yeah.
there's a little benefit tacked onto the end of it. When it started, 7.9 employees for every one person retired. Now, today, we have 3 to 1.
Oof.
Does that sound sustainable to you?
Jesus.
Right? It's not sustainable. So, and Alberta can get out. We over contribute by the tune of about $3 to $5 billion each and every year to the Canada pension plan.
Mm.
That's $3 to $5 billion we could keep here. That's another equalization payment. So
Mhm.
we had a referendum on equalization, and 67% of Albertans said, get rid of it. We don't want to
Mm.
be paying equalization. The Alberta pension plan should be absolutely no different, because
Yeah.
the benefits don't have to change. If anything, they'll get better. They won't get worse. And we get to keep an extra $3 to $5 billion right here at home in Alberta to either A, lower your taxes, build more schools, build more hospitals. It's our money to decide what to do with, not Ottawa's, to fund
Mm.
other people's retirements in other provinces.
I think you'll remember the actual quote of who said this. I'm bad with remembering names, but nobody spends your money as carefully as you do. And I know that was in your
Mm.
book as well.
I don't know
Of
about
like,
that.
as soon as it's somebody else's money, um, like you are not, like, you don't think about like, well, what did I actually put in
Mm.
to earn this? Like, what is the actual value of things? And this pension plan right now it's more redistribution of wealth. You aren't getting back what you're paying in unless you are under earning. Now you're getting the result of somebody else's labor. And so if somebody feels like, yeah, they want to get what they put into this, then the way to do that would be through an Alberta pension plan or an independent Alberta.
Well, the way to do that would be to have no pension plan at all, but to actually take that money. I would even be okay with, if we wanted to say, you know what, the government said, okay, you have to have a savings account or an investment account, and then let's even set it up like, why is it that it has to be taxed and then taxed again, right, when you draw on it? So, like, there's all these things that we can do to improve, to make it better.
Mm.
You just need the political will to do so. And so, this was one of the things for me with Danielle Smith and this UCP government. I was very hopeful when they came out. If they had just did this the day that they made the announcement, we'd people be collecting checks very shortly, right? And they would realize that, oh wow, wait a minute, I'm not losing anything here. I'm actually gaining, right? And the proof would
Right.
have been in the pudding. So let's stop playing the political games, and let's start taking the actions that are necessary to do it. So, with respect to the Alberta pension plan, absolutely best thing that Alberta can do. It's another cog in the wheel that we could just check off and say, hey, it's one less thing that we have to worry about as a result of independence. And it's something that should have been done a long time ago.
Mm. Yep.
And we can do it, by the way, without ever taking a dollar out of the Canada pension plan if we really, truly wanted to. I want my $350 billion that Canada owes us back here in Alberta. But at the 120 billion that, Trevor Tome and that group said, that's quite workable. But we don't need to collect a single dollar. Why? Because it is a pay-as-you-go system. And we are
Mm.
paying $3 to $5 billion more. So we could turn around tomorrow, not get $1 from Canada, pay every retiree we have here in Alberta, save and invest our $3 to $5 billion and let that grow, and we would still be fine. Albertans would still be better off.
Mm.
Now we're
That
building
is
a pension for Albertans.
Yeah, that is such an indictment of the system. Hey,
It's
that's
amazing
crazy.
what can be done when you don't waste money.
But you have to use it wisely, right?
Yeah.
But that means you have to know, and then you don't know the answer, but it doesn't mean the answer doesn't exist. The answers are out there. Now I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. The answers are out there, right? If you're willing to look for them. And there's expertise, there's talent, there's people that are already doing this. It's not hard. It's, somewhat complicated. You may not understand all the moving parts and pieces, but there's people doing it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, government thrives on opacity, and just don't worry about it, don't think about it, let us take care of it and handle it. But yeah, this is a very cool moment we're in right now. I feel more and more empowered every day, and I feel more confident every day that I see people like you, on the scene, guys like, Bruce Party, Jeff Rath, all the APP guys, like, we get more and more confident with the messaging every day. Rise of Alberta on Twitter is awesome for like infographics and stuff. Take the who else? Keith Wilson, of course, we had him on the show recently. I mean, there's so many like really, really intelligent voices in this movement. Eva Chipiuk. And so, yeah, I just feel like more and more confident every day. Nadine, is there something that we maybe didn't touch on or didn't ask you that you wish we did that you wanted to mention?
No, there's so many things going on in the world and so many conversations that we could have. Like we are going to have to do this
We
again.
will. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know if we want to share a little bit about the fundamentals of truth that's happening in Red Deer on
Oh, yeah.
Saturday. That might be a good thing to bring up.
Yeah.
Saturday, great lineup of speakers, including Bruce Party, who you just mentioned. Dr. Jack Mintz is coming to talk a little bit about the economics of things and things that people overlook or misinterpret or, make assumptions that don't always align with reality. And, I think it's just going to be an amazing day. I'll be there as well. My books will be there if people are interested in buying those. And of course, Leighton Gray will be there with his book as well and chatting. So you talk about all these brilliant minds. Well, instead of chasing them all down one by one, they're all going to be in the room. Right?
Yes.
For you to be able to engage with, talk to, ask your questions. We're going to have a full hour of Q&A that I'm going to facilitate. So I think it'll just be a spectacular day if people are interested. Red Deer on the Saturday, January the 10th, starts at 2 o'clock. I think doors open at 1. So come check us out. Eventbrite tickets, $20. Don't let the money, if you can't afford $20, just come. We'll find a way. We'll get you in there.
Of course,
And I
another.
think they are going to have the separation independence petition. I think that will be set up outside as well. So for people who just want to come and have a place, where things are going on, and they can sign their petition for independence or for a yes on the referendum. I do believe that will be available as well, just outside the door. So you don't have to pay to come in to do that. You can just come, stop by, sign your petition, and leave if you want to. I'd hope you'd stay, but
yeah. Of course, that's hosted by another heavy hitter of the movement, of course, Jason Levine, who I forgot to mention, but he's awesome. Definitely a great follow on X as well. Lots of great information. Come out January 10th, this Saturday, in Red Deer. It's, pretty much equidistance, between Edmonton and Calgary, guys. We got a lot of viewers in Edmonton and Calgary, so just come on down. We'll be there. James, I've been talking a lot.
Which one of the 20 lives in Edmonton?
What's that?
Which one of the 20 lives in Edmonton?
Oh, yeah. At least 8. James, sign us off, man. I've been talking too much. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, it's it was great to finally actually sit down and have a full-length conversation. I know we've had a couple short ones meeting in person. It was great to have you on the documentary. If anybody if you haven't seen it, we did 15 minutes on the UCP AGM, kind of contrasting the official messaging from the UCP, and then the rise of Alberta independence at that event, and kind of how that kind of stole the show. And there were some interesting moments that we were able to document, and we'll be filming some more as the months unfold. Some projects in the works. We're not fully ready to announce.
We're not at liberty to say.
We are working on. So, so if you're curious about that, follow us for more kind of polished content as well, not just our podcast.
And we will put, of course, Nadine, links to your book in the description here, links to your socials. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. We've had you for an hour and a half, so super appreciate you taking this time to chat with us. We will do it again. We're excited to see you on Saturday. We'll have a brew or two. And yeah, this has been great. Thank you again.
Oh, you guys are rock stars. I'm happy to do this anytime.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.